at a recent event in Pittsburgh. Former President Obama made remarks directed specifically at young black men and suggesting those who don't support Kamala Harris might be uncomfortable with a woman president, remarks that some interpreted as scolding. I recently spoke with one voter in Philadelphia who described those comments this way.
I was deeply offended, and it felt like a moment where it's like, you N-words better get in line and do what we say. And it felt like him as the czar of the Democratic Party coming down to say, go get these N-words in line. And the general tone of it was disgusting. It was abhorrent. I don't respect it. I didn't like nothing about it.
Well, today, the former president seems to have shifted his tone. Here was Obama today on the Young Men and the Three podcast, which is hosted by two NBA stars, about why young men might be Trump curious this election.
Y'all came of age. You were still in school when I was president and the financial crisis hit. But then you lived through a pandemic that was, I think we're all still dealing with. A lot of young men today are coming out of school feeling like it's going to be hard for me to match what my parents achieved. Maybe, because of the cost of living, it's going to be hard for me to buy a house or support a family in the same way. A lot of young men, they get frustrated and they say, well, nothing's happened. And the flip side is, when you got people who don't care about you, it can make it worse.
The former president reckoning with young male frustration, but making clear that the solution is not voting for someone like Donald Trump.
You know for a fact that misogyny and sexism is a real thing in this country. At the end of the day, we know she's strong, right? We know she's educated. There's no way you can have the credentials that she have and served in the positions that she served in, and people then look at her as unqualified. That in itself is a certain level of sexism, and I can't think a male with the same credentials will receive the same criticism.
That's Philadelphia City Council member Isaiah Thomas, who I spoke with last night. He's weighing in on the very real gender divide this election. Recent polling shows that only 41% of men plan to vote for Kamala Harris, compared with the 57% who plan to vote for Donald Trump. That is a 4% drop since Joe Biden's support in 2020. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut has written about the unique stressors, including loneliness and the achievement gap, that might ultimately be pushing men towards the right. In a piece called The Reason to Care About the Plight of Men, Murphy writes, men are committing suicide at a rate 4 times higher than women. 10% more women are enrolled in college today than men. 70% of drug overdose deaths in America today are males. I don't think we can deny that a lot of men are in crisis today. Joining me now to discuss is the man who wrote that, Democratic Senator from Connecticut, Chris Murphy. Senator Murphy, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I have found your attention to the subject and your writing about it incredibly empathetic and missing in a lot of ways from the national discourse, because I think we all, rightly so, have been very focused on women's rights, reproductive rights, LGBTQ+, and that all deserves its focus. But hand in hand, there's something else unfolding that I think probably warrants some focus, given especially the potential repercussions in the political sphere. Can you talk about the crisis you see unfolding and how that dovetails with other crises we see?
Yeah, I mean, this is an enormous and really complicated issue. Let me footstop for a second what you just said. We still live in a world in which men make more money than women. Men have more economic and political power. That is all true. And women right now are fighting for their rights in their lives. But it is also true that a lot of men are going through something right now. And it's not hard to understand why. For thousands of years, we lived in a society in which by birth, men had more legal power, more economic power, more cultural power than women. And today we live in a world in which that patriarchy is toppling. And one of the biggest signals that patriarchy is toppling is the pending election of a woman to be the most powerful person in the world. And so, men for centuries sort of easily found their identity through that system of men having more legal power. They were identified easily as protectors and breadwinners. And now you have just as many families where women make as much, if not more money than the men do. What men want, what everybody wants, but what certainly young men want is a feeling of power. And Donald Trump and Republicans offer it in a pretty simple recipe. We're just going to dial it back to the days where men were legally superior to women. We're essentially going to take power from women and deliver it to men. But that's not how it has to work. Power is not a zero-sum game, but you have to take it from somebody to give it to somebody else. And what Kamala Harris is saying is that the corporations and the millionaires and the billionaires, they have too much power. And I'm going to reorder our economy and our society in a way to deliver everybody, including young men, more economic power by letting you get a big tax break to start a small business, by making it easier for young men or young families to be able to afford your first house. Young men are going through something today. They want to feel power, and I don't think they actually want to take that power from women, but the Democrats often don't speak directly to those young men and explain to them how our agenda, how Kamala Harris's agenda is about putting power back in the hands of everybody in this country, but especially young men and men who feel like this transition to a post-patriarchal world has put them in a position where they're searching and they're having a harder time to find identity and meaning.
It's just such a challenge for Harris because she's represents a post-patriarchal world in a lot of ways, which is why I thought former President Obama's comments on the NBA podcast today and just his intentionality in terms of talking to young men in a way that I think is effectively trying to bring them back for the brink of being attracted to the siren song of Trumpism. I think that's probably a pretty important role for him to play, given the realities of where we are in terms of the gender divide in this election.
No, and listen, the right is having a direct, transparent conversation with men, and it is often in disgusting, immoral terms, whether that be Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson. But often the left says to young men, yes, we live in a world today in which women are increasing their share of political and economic power, in which you are no longer going to be able to find that easy identity as a breadwinner or protector, and you just need to get over it. I don't think that that's a satisfactory message. I think you've got to explain to young men how there are other ways that they can find power and identity, that there is nothing wrong with creating an identity that is both protector and nurturer and caregiver. And so having that direct conversation that President Obama is having with young men about what has happened to them over the course of the pandemic, what has happened more broadly in an era of feminism, I think is a really important conversation. And it's one that we haven't been having with intentionality like the right has had.
It's such an important point. And I direct everybody to your writing on this and your thinking on this because it's pretty unique in the sphere. Senator Chris Murphy, thanks for your time tonight. I appreciate you.